He crossed the street every time I did. My name's Noah. This happened back in February, around 6 months ago, when I was still living in my old apartment downtown. I've always been a night owl. As a freelance graphic designer working from home, I had the freedom to set my own schedule. Most nights, I'd finish work around midnight, throw on a jacket, and head out for a walk to clear my head. It was part of my routine, comforting, predictable, even meditative. The streets were quiet, the night air cool, and everything just felt calm. I had a usual route. I'd leave my place on Maple Street, walk down to the main avenue, loop around the small park near the post office, and head back. Sometimes I'd stop by a 24-hour convenience store on the way for a drink or snack. I knew that area like the back of my hand. Every street light, every uneven crack in the sidewalk, every porch light that never turned off. That Tuesday night was colder than usual. I remember pulling my hood tight and regretting not grabbing gloves. The streets were practically empty, which wasn't unusual for a cold weeknight. I was maybe 10 minutes into my walk when I saw someone behind me. He was on the opposite side of the street, a little ways back. I didn't think much of it at first. People walk late sometimes, especially in that area. He had his hood up, head down, hands in his pockets. Normal, really. Nothing alarming. But then I turned down Oak Avenue, part of my usual loop, and noticed he turned too. Still on the opposite side. Still keeping roughly the same distance. I told myself it was nothing, coincidence. People use Oak Avenue to cut through all the time. Still, I decided to switch things up and cross to the other side at the next intersection. I didn't have a reason, just a gut instinct, when I glanced behind me. He'd stopped at the corner, just stood there like he was waiting. Then, a few seconds later, he crossed diagonally to keep pace, still on the opposite side from me. At that point, my gut feeling started to change. I wasn't panicked, not yet. But something about how he matched my path without ever getting closer or farther, it didn't sit right. I picked up my pace a little. Nothing dramatic, just enough to test if he'd do the same. He did. Every time I looked back, he was there, not rushing, not lagging, just calmly adjusting to every move I made. I took a turn I never usually take, down a quiet residential street. One of those tree-lined blocks with parked cars and dim porch lights. I paused halfway down, pretending to tie my shoe while watching the corner from the corner of my eye. He showed up about 20 seconds later, turned onto the same street, and kept walking, still across from me, still the same distance. By now, my heart was pounding. I wasn't imagining it. This was deliberate. He wasn't just walking home. He was following me, not to catch me, but to watch. I turned back toward my apartment, taking the most direct route. It wasn't short. I had about 15 minutes to go. Every block, every turn, he was there. Never speeding up, never falling behind. Always on the other side. Always just watching. Then I remembered a stretch near my place that was under construction. The sidewalk narrowed to one side of the street. If we both kept walking, we'd eventually have to be on the same side. As we got closer, I slowed down. So did he. That's when I stopped. I reached the last intersection before the construction zone and stood at the corner, staring across the street. He stopped too. We stood like that for a few seconds. Maybe 40 feet apart. He didn't move. His face was shadowed by his hood, hands still in his pockets. No signs of aggression. No words. Just stillness. I pulled out my phone and aimed it at him, hoping it would spook him into leaving. He didn't budge. Then he slowly raised one hand and waved. Just once. Calm and steady, like we were neighbors passing on a morning walk. Then he turned and walked away, back in the direction we'd come from. I stood there, frozen, for I don't know how long. Eventually, I ran. I didn't stop until I was back inside my building. The elevator taking forever, my keys shaking in the lock when I finally reached my apartment. I didn't sleep that night. I left all the lights on, sat on the couch, and kept replaying everything in my head. Who follows someone like that without ever approaching? What would have happened if the sidewalk hadn't forced us together? Why the wave? For the next week, I stopped walking at night. When I finally started again, I changed everything: route, timing, clothes. I carried pepper spray. I started checking over my shoulder every block. I never went near Oak Avenue again. Then, about a month later, I was grabbing a soda at the convenience store I used to stop at. The guy behind the counter, who knew me pretty well, asked why I hadn't been around at night lately. I told him what happened, half laughing like I was trying to downplay it. His expression changed instantly. He said I wasn't the only one. A woman who came in regularly had a similar story, someone matching her pace, mirroring her movements. Always across the street. She'd stopped walking at night too. Then he told me something else. 2 weeks after my run-in, a jogger was found dead near that same construction site. It was ruled a mugging gone wrong. But the cashier said there were strange details: his shoes on the wrong feet, jacket zipped inside out, wallet still in his pocket. He wasn't robbed. Just left there. I moved out 2 months later. Not just because of that, but it was a big part of the decision. I couldn't walk those streets anymore without glancing across the road, wondering if someone was out there, watching, waiting. I still take walks in my new neighborhood. I still love the quiet, the calm. But now, if I see someone across the street, keeping pace with me, I always test it. I cross over, just to see. So far, no one's followed. But I can't help but think somewhere he's still out there, keeping pace, staying in the shadows, waiting for the next quiet street and the next person who doesn't realize they're being watched. Until it's too late to turn around. I made it home. But someone slipped in behind me. My name is Megan Foster. I'm 26 years old and work as a graphic designer in a fast-paced marketing firm downtown. A few weeks ago, something happened that changed the way I live my life. I've moved since then, changed my routines, and installed cameras. But I still check over my shoulder when I walk home. I used to walk home from work almost every night. My apartment was only about 20 minutes away from the office, and I enjoyed the time alone, just me, the cold air, and a podcast in my ears. I always wore noise-canceling headphones, which probably wasn't smart. But after staring at screens all day, zoning out with true crime or music was my way to decompress. My usual route was simple: down State Street for 4 blocks, then a left onto Riverside, which I followed for 6 more before reaching the quiet residential street where I lived. The first half of the walk usually had other people around: bar patrons, fellow office workers, late-night dog walkers. But Riverside always got eerily quiet. That part made me uneasy sometimes, but I brushed it off. It was a Thursday night in early November, colder than usual. We'd just wrapped up a massive campaign, and I left the office around 10:45 p.m. Hood up, gloves on, podcast playing. Everything felt normal at first. The city was winding down for the night. I passed a few smokers outside a bar and a couple of people heading into the subway. But once I turned onto Riverside, something shifted. The streetlights there were always inconsistent. Some flickered, others didn't work at all. That night felt especially dark. It wasn't just the shadows, it was something else. Something subtle but unsettling. A tension in the air I couldn't explain. About halfway down the street, I got that feeling. You know, the one when something's wrong, even if you can't say why. My skin prickled, and I felt a growing urge to look behind me. But I told myself I was just being paranoid. Probably the podcast getting to my head. I walked faster. When I reached my building, I already had my keys in hand. The apartment was in an old Victorian house that had been divided into 6 units. The entrance had a small vestibule, and the front door was supposed to lock automatically. I opened it and stepped inside, still lost in my own head. That's when it happened. As I reached back to pull the door shut, it hit resistance. Not like it was jammed, like something was in the way. I turned to see what it was, and my stomach dropped. A man's hand was wedged in the doorframe. Before I could react, he pushed his way in. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I saw enough. He was smiling, not in a friendly way, but like he knew something I didn't. "Thanks," he said casually. Cold night. I froze. I didn't know what to do. Confronting him felt dangerous. Acting scared felt worse. So I said nothing and started walking up the stairs toward my apartment. I heard his steps behind me, slow and steady. When I got to the second floor, I glanced back. He had stopped on the first floor, standing outside apartment 1B, pretending to search for keys. But I could tell he wasn't really looking for anything. He was watching me. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped my keys trying to unlock my door. Once inside, I bolted it, then stood in the dark, listening. A minute later, I heard footsteps again. They paused outside my door, then moved on up to the third floor. That's when I panicked. The third floor was empty. One unit had been vacant for months. The other tenant, an older woman, was out of state visiting family. No one should have been up there. I texted my friend Jessica, who lived nearby. While I waited for her to come over, I sat on my couch with a kitchen knife in one hand and my phone in the other, staring at the front door. When she arrived, she insisted we check the third floor. We crept up the stairs, armed with pepper spray and shaking hands. Both apartment doors were shut. We knocked, no answer. But the hallway window at the end was wide open. Cold air rushed in. That window had been painted shut for years. I knew, because I'd helped the upstairs neighbor try to open it once in the summer. Someone had forced it open recently. We went back downstairs and called the police. 2 officers showed up and searched the building. No one was there. They figured the man had used the fire escape. Probably a drunk or a homeless guy, they said. Nothing criminal. Nothing to worry about. But I didn't feel safe. In the days that followed, strange little things kept happening. My locked mailbox was sometimes found open. My blinds weren't how I left them. Once, my doormat was upside down. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was just on edge after what had happened. Then came the moment that shattered that illusion. I came home late one night, after another long day at work. I was hyper-aware now, no headphones, always checking behind me. The building was quiet. My apartment seemed untouched. Until I saw it. On the coffee table was my spare apartment key. The one I kept hidden under a fake rock in the garden by the front steps. Only 2 people knew about it, my mom and Jessica. Someone had been inside. I called Jessica, panicking. We called the police again. This time they took it seriously. They checked for prints, asked questions, interviewed neighbors. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. They suggested I change the locks and maybe stay somewhere else for a while. The next day, my landlord changed the locks. I added a deadbolt and a peephole camera. I stayed at Jessica's for 3 nights, then decided I couldn't let fear chase me out of my home. I went back, but I was different. Paranoid. Careful. I avoided routines, varied my walking route, and stayed alert. For a while, nothing else happened. Then last week, I was cleaning my closet and pulled out a box of boots I hadn't worn since last winter. Behind it was a piece of folded paper. I opened it with shaking hands. It was a schedule. My schedule. It listed my usual work hours, my walking route, the nights I went to yoga, even the bar I liked on Fridays. At the bottom was a message written in neat block letters: "You really should be more careful, Megan." I moved out that same day. Stayed in a hotel while searching for a new place. I never went back, not even to pack. Jessica helped me hire a moving company. The police increased patrols near my old building, but they never found anything. The landlord said no one ever inquired about the 3rd-floor apartment. Sometimes I wonder if he's still out there, watching someone new, blending in, slipping through doors right before they close, and I wonder if they'll notice him in time. I was being followed. Then I realized he wasn't alone. My name is Mason Reed. I work as a night security guard at a medical research building in downtown Cincinnati. The job itself isn't particularly eventful, mostly keeping an eye on the monitors, doing a few patrol rounds, checking doors. But what happened to me one night 3 months ago has stuck with me ever since. I still think about it every time I step outside after dark. It was early September, a Tuesday. The weather was mild, one of those nights that still felt like summer, with the kind of quiet that only exists between 3 and 4 a.m. I just finished my shift and was doing what I always did, walking home alone. It's about a 20-minute walk from the building to my apartment, a route I knew like the back of my hand. Commercial blocks slowly fade into quiet neighborhoods. It's usually empty at that hour. I'd done it so often that I stopped being cautious. I just wanted to get home, take a shower, and crash. I was about 10 minutes into my walk, passing through a familiar stretch on Meridian Street. The storefronts were shut down, metal gates pulled over the windows. The streetlights there are spaced out enough that they create little islands of visibility, with big gaps of shadow between. I've never liked that stretch, but it's the shortest route. As I was walking through one of the darker spots, I heard footsteps behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. You get the occasional delivery driver or late shift worker on foot around that area. But something about the rhythm of the steps felt wrong. Too steady. Too deliberate. I sped up slightly, just to test it, and the footsteps did too. I slowed down. So did they. I didn't turn around. Instead, I pulled out my phone and used the black screen like a mirror. Sure enough, there was someone behind me, maybe 30 or 40 feet back. Just a silhouette under the next street light. Average height. Hands in their pockets. Nothing too distinct. But they were matching my pace exactly, and that's when I knew this wasn't just someone heading home the same way. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe they were just being cautious too. Maybe they were nervous because I was in front of them. But deep down, I knew better. I've worked security long enough to know when something feels off. At the next intersection, instead of continuing straight like I usually do, I took a right. No hesitation. Just a clean turn. I walked half a block, listening. The footsteps turned with me. I tried another turn, this time left, down a side street lined with parked cars and quiet homes. Same result. Still behind me, same measured pace. My heart started to pound. That's when I made a decision I regret. I turned down Fletcher Avenue. Fletcher is a narrow residential street with big trees on both sides. At night, it's practically pitch black. The canopies block out most of the light from the old street lamps. I thought I could lose him there, duck between houses if I had to. I was maybe 100 feet in when I noticed movement ahead of me. Someone stepped out from behind a parked van. They didn't say anything. They didn't move toward me. Just stood there, hands in their pockets, half-shadowed, like they'd been waiting. Same posture. Same stillness. I stopped in my tracks. The footsteps behind me stopped too. I didn't know what to do. I was boxed in. The houses along Fletcher have high fences and deep yards. No lights were on. No people around. I was alone. Then the guy behind me started walking again. Faster now. And the one ahead. Same thing. They were closing in. I didn't wait. I turned and ran. Not toward either of them. I cut sideways, through someone's yard. Trampled bushes, knocked over a trash bin, didn't care. I jumped a low fence and landed in a narrow alley that ran behind the block. I could hear both of them now, chasing me. Their footsteps were louder, faster, close. I didn't look back, just ran. I'd walked this neighborhood enough times to know where to go. 2 blocks east, there's a 24-hour gas station. I aimed for it like my life depended on it. I didn't take the direct path. I zigzagged, doubled back once, slipped between buildings. I even ducked behind a dumpster at one point and waited, holding my breath. One of them passed right by. He didn't see me, but I saw him clearly. Black hoodie, black jeans, black cap pulled low. He was holding a phone, speaking into it. That's when it hit me. There were more than just the two. He was talking to someone else. This wasn't random. I stayed hidden until I was sure he was gone, then took a different alley to avoid the direction he ran. Eventually, I saw the bright lights of the gas station. I sprinted the last block and pushed through the glass doors like I was escaping a nightmare. The woman behind the counter was someone I vaguely recognized, Denise, I think. She took one look at me and asked if I was okay. I told her someone had been following me and asked her to call the police. We waited inside. I stood by the window but stayed back in the shadows. 5 minutes later, I saw them. 4 figures in dark clothing across the street. They didn't come closer. Just stood there for a minute, watching the gas station. Then they slowly turned and walked away, disappearing into the dark. When the police arrived, I gave them everything I had, what I saw, where I was, even a description of the guy in the hat. They drove around the area but didn't find anything. The officer said it could have been an attempted robbery or worse, but without any real interaction or evidence, there wasn't much they could do. The next night, I didn't walk to work. I took an Uber. After my shift ended, I found something on my car in the employee lot. A piece of paper tucked under the wiper. Just a line written in sharp black marker, "Next time, keep walking." I handed it over to the police. No fingerprints. No cameras in that section of the lot. Nothing to go on. Just me, my word, and a creeping sense of dread that hasn't left me since. I've changed everything since then. No more walking. I vary my routes. I carry pepper spray. I check under the car before getting in. But I still work the same shift, still park in the same lot. And sometimes, when I step outside into the dark, I feel like someone's watching. Not constantly. Just enough that I keep checking. I'll never know who they were or what they wanted. Maybe they picked me at random. Maybe they'd been watching for a while. But that night changed the way I moved through the world. It reminded me that sometimes, danger doesn't wear a mask or shout warnings. Sometimes, it's just quiet footsteps in the dark, waiting for you to make one wrong turn.